Today's lesson is going to be creating an animated GIF from a video clip. These are often now called Cinemagraphs. That's the fancy new word for them, but they are basically old-time GIF animations with a little bit of a twist. Anyway, to do this, what we need first is some type of a video clip, and a great place to get these is the archive.org, which has tons and tons of copyright-free public domain videos and animations and all sorts of things. So I went into my favorite section in the Moving Image Archive, the Prelinger, I'm not sure how you say that, archives, and I chose one on posture from 1953, and I downloaded the movie. So next thing I'm going to want to do is to open this movie up in the QuickTime player, which I've already done, and actually it's very tiny, but I just want to be able to see better, so I've stretched it a bit. You can kind of scrub through this and choose an area, but I know that I wanted to, after I watched this for a while, I wanted to take this area of this young girl looking down and looking up. So what I want to do is get sort of in the neighborhood, and I'm going to want to trim. So if I go under Edit, Trim, and I'm going to get this new yellow bar that comes up, and what I want to do is drag my in point to roughly where she's beginning. So right about there. And I'm going to drag the other end from the right to get a close few seconds of animation here. And because the movie's kind of long, it's hard to cut it down to quite as little as I need. So I'm going to trim it twice. So let's get it here. That gets me in the ballpark, and I'm going to trim it. And now I'm going to save this by saying Export. I'm going to save it as Posture, Clip, whatever you're going to save it as is fine. And I'll export it. Okay, so now I want to open Posture Clip 1. And let's make that bigger too so we can see what's going on. And we're going to have to trim it again. So because it was long, I mean, if you can trim it in one fell swoop, that's terrific. I just wasn't able to do that. So let's edit it again. That's hard to say. Edit it again. And this time let's get right down to the frames that we need. So you can see there's a camera move there. That's not going to be good for us. And right about there, the camera settles down. It's still moving a little bit, but we're going to do something else later to fix that. And let's trim it back to the last frame. So there we are. Let's take a look at that. So now we have...
Here is Adrienne.
Poor Adrienne.
Here is Adrienne.
Okay. Obviously, we're not going to need the sound, but we're not going to worry about that. So let's save this one more time. Export. Posture Clip 02. There we go. All right, this is what we're going to work with. We're going to go into Photoshop now. I will say File, Import Video Frames to Layers. And I want to choose my Posture Clip 02, that last one that had the fewest frames. Now, that was maybe 3 seconds long. And here I get a little preview of it.
Here is Adrienne.
So even at 3 seconds, though, if it's 30 frames per second, we've got 90 frames. So we probably do not want all of that. Let's go and say we only want to import every, I'm going to just say 4 or 5 frames. Let's say 4. And we want to make it a frame animation. I'm going to say OK. And here we have it. Let's see how many layers we ended up with. We ended up with 21 layers, even just with that little bit. So let's take a look at what that gave us. Let's close my other one here. And let's take a look at the new one that we're creating. You can see that I have all of these frames here. By the way, if it didn't open it automatically, you're going to want to go under Window, Timeline to see this timeline below. So let's take a look at our animation as it is right now. Okay, a few things are evident, and that is that there's still a bit of a hiccup. The camera moves. So we may want to look at where that jump is occurring when we look at it frame by frame. So here's frame 1. It looks like it actually jumps from frame 1 to frame 2. And then from 2 to 3 as well, but I don't want to get rid of anything beyond there because she's already starting to look up. Let's get rid of frame 1. So I've got frame 1 selected, and I'm going to delete that frame. Yes. Okay, now let's take a look at what we've got. So the camera is pretty steady, but it does jump around a little bit. Do you see how it jumped from there to there? And then there's a bunch of frames here that look really similar. Let's go and double our size here so we can get a much better look. In fact, we'll even zoom in a little more. Okay, so frame 1, and you can see really clearly here that it's jumping. Moving around a little too much. Now, one thing that will help us make our GIF animation smaller and to make it look more like those Cinemagraphs is to make it so that the background sits still. Now I also noticed I had one frame in here that has sort of a icky stamp on her face, probably just from the age of the film, and I think we could probably jump from here to here without too much. So I'm going to get rid of frame 15, delete frame 15, and let's go back and look at 7, 8, 9, 10. Let's go from 7 to 10. Let's get rid of frames 9 and 10. Delete frames. And this is all going to help us get our frames smaller and smaller. So now we've got it down to 17 frames of animation. Let's play it, see what it looks like. Okay, it's choppy, it's still moving a little bit much. It's just not playing nicely. So let's continue forward of making this a much better animation here. I'm going to choose a frame where the camera is where I want it to be. So it looks like frame 3 is as good a frame as any. And if I look at what layers are turned on, layer 4 is turned on. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a duplicate of frame 4. So let's duplicate this layer. And this is going to be my mask, let's say. So I'm going to drag this up to the top. And that probably just goofed up all of my frames. We'll see what happens. And what I want to do is I want to isolate her face. And keep the rest of the photograph so that it stays the same. So while I'm on this layer, I'm going to select her face, more or less. And we may have to do some touch-ups, but let's just start with this. Looks like I should get a little more. Hold down the Shift key. Nothing like watching somebody work, right? And then I'm going to remove a little bit here. We'll have to keep an eye out to make sure we don't see anything strange going on here. Okay, so now I've got her face, and I want to make a mask. And I always do this backwards, so what I've done is actually created a mask of everything but her face. So I want to Option click on the mask, and I can select all and invert. So this is just an easy way to fix my my issue here. And now I should be masking out the face. And just to be sure, let's go back to my image here. On frame 3, if I were to hide, you'd see that I have a hole in her head. Perfect. So now what I want to do is go back through each layer And I want to keep this layer on while we go through each. Now you can see I'm going to have some strangeness here. We'll touch it up after the fact. And wow, it didn't mess me up too bad. So let's just go through and make sure we're getting each frame. And what you can see now is that the background isn't jumping around, because what we've done is isolate just those areas. Now our mask is a little messy, so we're going to go back where we can see the mask, and I'm going to adjust it. So what do I want to do? I want to click on my mask, and I'm going to get my paintbrush, and I'm going to paint with white to remove some of this mask area. And hopefully that will help me to blend it in a little better. All right, now let's look at each one. Select none. So that looks a little better already. All right, let's play it now and take a look. Okay, you can see at the end there we see a little bit of haziness on her mask again. Let's click on that and continue with my white paintbrush here. Add a little back in. Hopefully that fixed it. Let's watch it again. Okay. Now let's fix the timing, because what we really want is to have her pause at the beginning and the end. And one other thing is that we don't want to have a hiccup. So let's put a little bit of a pause here at the very beginning, a half a second. Let's go to the middle, and let's have her pause right before she looks down. And then let's put another pause here. And let's see if we've got a hiccup. Oftentimes the beginning and the end will create a little bit of a hiccup, but let's see. Okay, so it looks like with the pause at the beginning and the end, she kind of lifts her head a little bit. And so I think what we'll do is pause it, and we'll take the time change off of this. We'll put this back to 0.03, it looks like. Let's do other, 0.03. That, by the way, that time came in from our frame choice from the video. That's where that came from. So let's pause her here for a second and see if that does the trick. And I see a little bit of a hiccup where we have our other pause. So I'm going to try one other thing. I think I'm going to pause it on the frame before for a half a second and put this one back to the 03. The reason being is she pulls her head back a touch from here to here before she starts to look down. So let's see if that looks smoother. It does. In fact, we may even want to put it back one more. Again, you just have to get in here and tweak this, and then see what you like. So 0.03, and let's play. Oh, I like that better. All right, so there's my GIF animation, and let's save it out now. First of all, you want to make sure you save your Photoshop file. So I'm going to save this as posture 04.psd, and we want to keep the layers, obviously. And then to create our animated GIF, we want to do Save for Web. And I encourage you to look at it 4-up. You can see the original, optimized, 2-up, or 4-up. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit on the critical area, which I think is her face. And let's look at the options that we have here. We've got 64 colors, no dither. We've got 64 colors with 100% dither. Let's drop this one way down so that you can see the difference. Let's change this down to 8 colors so you can really see what it's doing. And let's turn on the dither at 100%. Okay, so if there was dithering, you'd see these little dots. We don't really want to have that. We want it to look fairly smooth. And honestly, I don't see much difference between the 0 dither and the 100% dither. Let's zoom in a little more. So from the original, all 3 of these look pretty similar. You can really see the dither here. So I'm going to go for whichever one is the smaller. And this one happens to be the smallest one. So I'm going to opt for that. 96, almost 100K. And I will say save. And I'm going to output it as my Posture 04 GIF. And then what I want to do to take a look at it is let's open it. Open file. Posture 04 GIF. Open. Here it is at actual size. Let's zoom in. And it's a little fast. I think I would even slow that down a little bit, but you know how to do that. So I'll leave you with that, and I hope you have some fun creating your animated GIFs.